What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and welcome to the Houndmaster guide. And in all my guide videos, I usually talk about the strengths and weaknesses. I go through their gear that they have access to, I try and explain how to play them, and then I give you a few team ideas to help get you started. It's been a minute since I recorded one of these, but also I'm currently suffering from some audio technical difficulties, as it were. So far, I have ordered a new microphone and new software. I'm hoping one of these two cleans out the issue, because it seems like it could be both. I'll do my best to keep the audio clean, but some stuff may get through, and I apologize about that. Enough intro stuff. What is the Houndmaster good at? He is a versatile damage dealer, but also versatile support unit, so he can do a lot of different things. Definitely a high skill cap type of character. He also has beast damage bonus on his main attack. This comes in handy pretty much at all points in the game. Beast is able to show up in every region, and it is probably the second most common enemy type behind Eldritch. Houndmaster also has great reach. His attacks can hit many units. He's a sniper basically that can hit the front, unlike Arbalest, which is really cool. He has a cleave. He has a stun that can go into rank 3. He's got a lot of good stuff for him. He can support your team in a variety of ways, either through dodge tanking, control, marks, prot shredding, stress healing, and then his camp skills. He has more stress healing, he has scouting, he has nighttime ambush preventers, he has on-demand damage through dog biscuits. So this character can do a lot of things, which is why I said it's kind of a high skill cap character. Weaknesses for Houndmaster. He actually doesn't have many. You know, go figure, a versatile character with many strengths is able to do a lot of things and doesn't really have a lot of glaring issues as far as kit is concerned. Though the one that does stand out the most is his sniper attack. The Hound's Rush does have very low accuracy for a Omni Reach type of attack. Maxed out, it's at 105 compared to Arbalest, who is the other sniper, the premier sniper, and she is able to get to 115. So Houndmaster is about 10 accuracy behind someone else that kind of meshes with what he's doing. This section is about how to play Houndmaster. As I said, he is a high skill cap character, so your loadout really determines what he's going to be doing, but generally you want some form of Hound's Rush or Hound's Harry. You want at least one good offensive attack, and then you fill in the rest with what your team needs. When you're not using your main attack with Houndmaster, you have to decide what he's doing with the rest of his other turns, and that depends on his abilities. So if you have the Mark, for instance, not only is it really good to set up other Mark characters like Arbalest, Bounty Hunter, or another Houndmaster, it has the best prot reduction in the game, so even your characters like Hellion or Crusader or Highwayman, for instance, who don't really need the Mark synergy or can benefit from it easily, do still appreciate having protection lowered on enemies. So this move is pretty versatile, and we'll talk about it later. If you don't need to mark something, you don't need to do damage. Stunning's always good, and if he's in the back, then you can use Cry Havoc to stress heal or guard characters that are low HP or mark themselves. So as I said, he has a lot he can do on his turns, and it's really difficult to come up with just a hard and fast rule, if this, then this, you know? So it really is going to take some experience before you get comfortable with that. Next, we'll talk about Houndmaster's skills, because he is very versatile, as I was saying before. Hound's Rush is your main damage option. It doesn't have a damage penalty. It has pretty low base accuracy, all things considered. Good crit modifier. Get bonus damage for beast and marked targets. So this does really good damage to whatever it hits, especially if it can stick the bleed. That's just essentially an extra 6 damage or more if you crit. Really good move, usually the thing you have on at all times if you have an attack at all. Hound's Harry, this move is kind of mixed. Cleaves in this game aren't great by any means, but if you're not, it's weird because cleaves get better the lower difficulty setting you're playing, if that makes sense, because when you go into the higher difficulty settings, enemies have more HP. Like if you're playing Stygian or Blood Moon, they have 20% more. So cleaves get a bit harder to pull off, but at the same time, this hits everything, it bleeds everything for a pretty decent amount, and that's 4 chances to crit and all that. So there's a lot of good stuff coming from this, and there's a lot of synergy you can find. So Hound's Harry is still useful, but not a thing you press every single turn unless you have a very specific game plan in mind. Target Whistle, this is the best mark in the game. If you've watched my other content, I've definitely talked about this move quite a lot, and there are a couple reasons. The first reason is it has the biggest prot reduction in the game at -30%. That is huge. The other is that the chance for it is, for some reason, 30% higher than any other mark that does anything. So if you look at Sniper's Mark or Vulnerability Hex or Bounty Hunters, I believe it's Marked for Death, all of those at max level have 140% chance to apply their effects, but for some reason Target Whistle has an extra 30. So not only do you have the strongest prot reduction in the entire game, you also have the most consistent one at that. So you don't need to tool for it. You don't have to bring a debuff amulet or some other trinket that gives you debuff chance, because it's just going to stick anyway. This move is very good. Target Whistle can find a home on pretty much any team if you're not running just straight up no mark and damage over time comps, which we will talk about one. But if there's any direct damage and you expect to run into prot, put it on. Cry Havoc, this move is not good early on. It's actually really good later. It's weird. It's one of the few moves that scales incredibly hard from early to late game, because early game, the percentages and the amount that it recovers is very low, and it's often not worth pressing. Other stress healers are just better, like Jester or Crusader, but Cry Havoc gets really good at Champion specifically because the effect chance goes up to 74, the heal amount is pretty decent, so you're usually going to hit 2-3 people, sometimes 4 each turn, which is really good. This heals the entire team, including Houndmaster, so this is just a really good move to slot on if you're going to put him in the back and you need stress healing. This is also something you don't have to carry around at all times. If you want to do a couple fights, get halfway through the dungeon, and then your team is starting to stress out a little bit, then you can swap one of your other moves out and put it on, and then start trying to work in turns to stress heal while you're fighting afterwards. Guard Dog is a move I have historically had issues with. Like, it is pretty much a channel meme at this point that I just suck at pressing this button at the correct times. It's weird because it's a guard and you'd think it'd be very straightforward, but the guard buff only lasts 2 turns. This is very important because if Houndmaster goes before the unit he's guarding, it's going to drop off 1 round already when that unit takes its turn. And then when it comes back around and Houndmaster goes before them again, if that something like that happens, the guard's going to drop off immediately after. So it feels like it runs out essentially in 1 turn, which can make this actually difficult to time. You have to pay attention to it. Outside of that, it is a good ability. Guards are just good in this game because you can really disrupt enemy tactics with that, which is really helpful. And also, it is a dodge buff. Houndmaster has really good dodge baseline at 30 maxed, and then being able to give yourself 20 stacking and all that is just fantastic. Lick Wounds is a move I really just don't like. I do like self heals and stuff, but considering Houndmaster's HP and his other abilities, he can already stun and dodge tank and stuff like that. Healing makes sense in his kit, but it just feels a bit worse compared to the other really good self heals in the game, specifically Absolution and Solemnity. Both of these heal not only HP but stress as well, and they just seem to get more value out of their use. With that said, the ability is not actually bad. Any form of healing that you can use that you don't have to depend on someone else for is good in this game. So you can still run it, but don't be surprised if you go through dungeons and you never press it. Blackjack is an incredible stun. Houndmaster can use it from the front and he can reach into rank 3 with it. There are a lot of good targets in rank 3 for this to hit. Plenty of good ones up front too to slow down. So this move is just fantastic. You know, minus 65% is kind of whatever, but it's enough to chip in for like, 4 damage. So that means you can reliably stall with it, but also lock down enemies. The stun chance is also 10% higher than average, so it's actually pretty strong in that regard. If you're putting Houndmaster up front, this is a really good move to put on just because it's a stun and stuns win in this game. Time to look at the camp skills for Houndmaster. So release the Hound, 4 points for 30% scouting chance. This is just great. More scouting is never bad. 4 points is a lot to invest, but 4 points and 2 points specifically, so even numbers. The 3-point skills are a bit harder, but any even point cost skill is pretty easy to weave in for most teams. Man's Best Friend for minus 20% stress. This is cool. You don't really need this too often, just between the dodge tanking and Cry Havoc and stuff, but it never hurts. It's 2 points. It's a lot of stress healing, so it's not bad. Therapy Dog, this is strictly worse than Jester's version, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't pick this. It doesn't mean you should always take Jester over Houndmaster. It just means it's different. Jester is the noted stress healer. This is just something Houndmaster can do, but minus 10 stress to everyone and 10% stress reduction for 4 fights is good. Worth 3 points, definitely. Hound's Watch, this is a copy of Dismas camping skill Bandit Sense. It's an ambush preventer that manipulates surprise chance. Not much else to be said. It's 4 points. It's really good. Always worth having on. Next, we'll talk about trinkets, and Houndmaster has some pretty interesting ones that let him do a variety of playstyles. The scouting whistle to start off with, this is what makes Houndmaster, no joke, an S tier class in Torchless. It is a common trinket, it's scouting, it's trap disarm, it's easy to get, and Houndmaster's already a good character, so this is just great. If you play Dark Runs, Torchless, whatever, and you run Houndmaster, this makes him incredible, so you should have it. It's a great trinket. Outside of Torchless, it's still good. You know, you still get the 20% trap disarm, so that's okay. Agility Whistle, the debuff resist downside really just doesn't matter, so 4 dodge for 1 speed is really strong, so if you get this early, definitely slap it on. Cudgel Weight, this thing is actually really good. So Houndmaster's stun is already great, and giving it more stun chance is fantastic, and then having -1 speed isn't that huge of a penalty. It does matter. You will feel it a bit more since Houndmaster's speed is kind of average, but the additional stun chance is great because you can still double stun certain enemies. Protective Collar is one you have to plan around, but it's still a very good trinket. You get the 12 dodge just for free, and that is fantastic. You get the -15% damage, and this is where I was saying you have to plan around this downside. If you're going to run this and you're worried about your on-hit damage, either juice it up with like another trinket or really try and focus on doing bleed damage because that's not as dependent on hit damage, although it does help. Still a really good trinket if you're going to run a dodge Houndmaster or a tank Houndmaster, or if you just have nothing else, this is still good to put on. Spike Collar is your big damage trinket for the Houndmaster class. You get bonus damage just flat, bonus bleed chance plus 30 is huge, minus healing received is noticeable, but 20% is manageable, so it's not that big of a deal. And then minus healing skills 50%, that affects lick wounds, so that means your lick wounds not only has -50% just when you use it, when it impacts you it's another -20, so lick wounds is pretty much off the table unless you just need to get off Death's Door. Otherwise, if you just want raw damage, this is a go-to option unless you have neutral trinkets. Alright, the last few trinkets are the DLC ones, so if you don't have the Crimson Quartz and Color of Madness, then you won't have access to these, but just to show you what you might be missing out on. Evidence of Corruption is hands down one of the best Crimson Court trinkets just at all. Any singular Crimson Court trinket, you stack them up together, this is in like the top 10. It is so powerful, it is useful at pretty much all points of the game, and it's just massive scouting chance with no requirement. The minus surprise chance is amazing, and then 10% stress is really a penalty you can choose to ignore. The better you get at the game, the less and less the bonus stress percentages on trinkets actually matter. They still matter, but they're much easier to mitigate once you understand stuff. Battered Lawman's Badge, this fixes Houndmaster's atrocious accuracy for the most part, so he just gets 15 flat bonus accuracy, and honestly, you could call it a day right there. That is good enough. Ancestor Pistol, already a very good trinket. It's the same thing, it's 15 accuracy but 3 speed. But outside of that similarity, that's pretty much where it ends. You get the bonus stress healing in camping. Very nice to have if you're gonna run Therapy Dog or Man's Best Friend. And then you get bonus healing skills, which this will apply to Wound Care if you decide to use that. And I believe Encourage for the stress skills, obviously. And so, you know, that's cool. But if you don't really care about lick wounds, then this doesn't matter too much. The minus stun resist actually does kind of suck, because stun is more common than you'd think, and then having yourself be susceptible to it is never ideal. And then also, for someone who has to guard units occasionally, if he does get hit by a stun, the guard drops, so you have to be a little bit careful. Otherwise, the set bonus is insane, 25% bonus damage against bleeding targets, as well as 5 crits. This means that if you have other units that can set up bleed, you can get some really good synergy, or Houndmaster can set himself up with Hound Terry, which will hopefully bleed the enemy team, and then you can just have your pick of targets, or you can just spam Hound Terry. There's a lot of flexibility in this set, and it's very powerful. It is one of the best sets in the game, for sure. Huskfang Whistle is kind of a mixed bag. It's definitely not a great trinket. The issues with this trinket is that Houndmaster is kind of frail as a unit. I normally don't hold this too much against other heroes, so I don't want to do the same thing to Houndmaster, but taking 10 dodge off of him actually does matter quite a bit because it makes him easier to hit. and you don't want your 37 base HP units easily hit by other attacks, you know? So you have to decide how you're going to protect them outside of dodge. You can stack more dodge, you can give them prot, you can have backup healers, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but it just doesn't quite feel worth doing. The other thing that I have a huge issue with this trinket is the bleed skill chance with dog treats and inventory. That's a lot of bleed chance, 50%, but this is a character that wants to spend the dog treats. The dog treats, you get 2 of them per mission, they take up a space in your inventory, which is kind of a negative. However, they are very powerful for Houndmaster. They give him a nice damage spike, accuracy, and it's just good to use. I don't know. I could go further on this, but I really just don't like this trinket. I appreciate what it's trying to do. I'm not saying it's not useful, that you can't build around and stuff like that, but it really feels like it's just too difficult to get insane value from compared to everything else that he has access to. I'll throw in a few more trinkets that are in the neutral pool just quickly. I'll go through the analysis part, so if you want to see the stats, feel free to freeze the video. But survival guide, you have bonus scouting and trap disarm, both things Houndmaster wants. This is kind of like the scouting whistle, but neutral and less effective, but less conditional stuff, so that's pretty cool. Camouflage cloak, this is one of the best dodge trinkets in the entire game. It's easy to get, stun resist, sucks to lose, but still not bad. And most people are playing at high torch anyway, so you always have the dodge up. Definitely a good trinket. Bleed amulets, helps you stick bleed skills, helps you resist bleed. Bleed's pretty common, never a bad thing. Steady bracer, this is a really good thing to use for pretty much any range character before you get really strong trinkets or class trinkets or whatever. It's 10 accuracy, the -2 dodge is negligible, and it's really good. I run this on a lot of characters, sometimes even a champion, before I have, you know, an abundance of like focus rings, for instance. It's a really good trinket, don't sleep on it. Sun ring, bonus accuracy, bonus damage, you're always at high torch anyway for the most part. Always a useful trinket to have. And then there's Ancestor's Pistol, 15 range accuracy, this is everything he wants, extra speed, and the plus stress doesn't really matter too much. Obviously, these are not all the trinkets you can put on Houndmaster, but these are a few from each tier that are really strong and can fit a variety of playstyles. For Houndmaster quirks, you're looking for anything that gives you accuracy, so either natural swing or natural eye. Those give you 5 flat accuracy or 5 range accuracy, bonus range damage or crit, and outside of those, pretty much any defensive quirk you can find. So Clodder for bleed resist is good. Anything that gives prot, speed, dodge, none of them are out of place on Houndmaster. He can find use for a lot of quirks, which is really cool. To wrap up the video, we'll talk about some teams and synergies Houndmaster has to help get you started with adventuring with this dude and his canine. The first example team is one of the named teams. I usually don't gravitate towards these, but it is fun to feature them sometimes. So it's called Let There Be Blood. There is obviously a lot of bleeding happening in this team, but it's actually a pretty well-built team for all intents and purposes. You have Hellion up front, who does bleed damage but has reach. You have Houndmaster, who, as we've been saying, is a very versatile character who can do a bunch of stuff. You have Jester, who is just never bad to have. You get the Battle Ballad buffs, stress healing, bleed damage, finale, solo, dodge tanking. Like, there's so much Jester can do, and he's on this team, so that's cool. And finally, we have Arbalest. I have been liking Arbalest more and more the longer I play this game, and I think she fits on this team very, very well. I was going to suggest something with Houndmaster and Arbalest already, and this just happens to be something that I can pitch. Arbalest takes care of the healing on this team. She doesn't have to be massive super damage. The rest of your team is capable of putting out plenty of damage without that, although she can still get shots in, so probably turn 1 and 2 she shoots, turn 3, 4, and 5 she's healing. Pretty standard Arbalest stuff. This next team I have talked about several times in various videos. If you don't have the Crimson Court DLC, I apologize. You will not be running this, but if you do have it, then you will like this team. This is a very heavy control team. It's one of my favorites, and this is one the community and people I've talked to just generally agree is just a very, very strong team. So with this team, you have Flagellant, Houndmaster, Bounty Hunter, and Plague Doctor in that order from right to left. This team gives you ample stuns on 3 characters. It gives you bleed technically on all 4. It's pretty hard to do it on all 4 at the same time, but you have access to that. Between your stuns and your damage over time, You have so much control with this team that it doesn't usually need to heal large amounts because it's not getting hit in the face for large amounts of damage every single turn. It's fast, it stuns, it does damage over time, it has multiple ways to heal, it has defensive layers with guard, and reclaim is just insane. You have the other flagellant stuff to keep him alive, and then you have bounty hunter who's able to just turn on big damage and control other units. You can run this team with like 2 bounty hunters or 2 houndmasters and stuff. You can like really swap it around, but the core that makes it go is the Plague Doctor Flagellant duo. This is one of the best pairings of characters in the entire game. So if you put those two with any decent synergy pair in the middle, they're going to do just fine. Not the best boss killing team, but it can do it. This is a really good team for normal dungeons because bosses are more resistant to stuns, but like I said, you can still run it for a lot of bosses. Alright, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you're thinking down below in the comments for your tips and strategies or other questions you have regarding Houndmaster. This is a very cool unit, very difficult unit to maximize, but once you do, I think you'll enjoy playing him a lot. The next character coming up in our guide series is Abomination, and I feel like that one's going to take quite a bit of research, if I do say, because that is a character that's basically 2 characters. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, as always, and I'll see you next time.